What's up guys, macadii here, and today guys, round 1 of the GPC World Championships in the knockout stages, where I am up against Matt, coach of the Surrey Litleos. Now, you guys may be wondering where the other 2 battles within the pools bracket was. Unfortunately, I was not able to battle those. We had problems with scheduling and stuff like that, and I ended up getting 2 wins from forfeits from those, which is really unfortunate. One of them was against Bob, who I was really looking forward to go. I'll put his link down in the description as well. He was one of the guys that organised the tournament, so hopefully I'm trying to plan some sort of like friendly where we use those teams, because we've both already got the prep in place already, but he ended up being busy on the final day when we were meant to have our battle, so he ended up having to forfeit on that one. So I do really apologise that I didn't get battles out for this one, but as I said, that meant I did advance onto the next stages. It's not ideal, and you know, these sorts of things happen. Real life gets in the way and stuff like that. So I do apologise about those lack of battles. But what we'll do now is we'll run into this. This is the knockout part, where if we end up losing this one, then we're basically out the tournament. And there's not much you can do about that if needs be. But I do really want to try and get my way to the top. So what I'll do is I'll go through his team, what he's going to be bringing, my team, and also my prep. Obviously, go a little bit in depth because with this being the knockout stage, I was really onto the prep and tried to get it the best that I could to try and make sure that I can get the win. And it's always very interesting doing 6v6 rather than like teams of 11 versus other teams of 11, because you would know exactly what they're going to be bringing, but then you know there's going to be some more very interesting sets to try and answer to that. So he's got Mega Medicham, Skarmory, Alakazam, Crawdaunt, Chansey, and Goodra. So a very scary Chansey Skarmory core, which is going to be very scary to beat. Mega Medicham as well, a fantastic wall breaker. Alakazam is going to help stop any offense at all. Crawdaunt is also scary as a wall breaker, and also the fact it gets priority, on top of the fact it can Dragon Dance and stuff like that. And then finally Goodra is very bulky, so it's a very well drafted team. Really scary to try and prep for, but I was really happy with the prep that I decided to do. So what I wanted to do is try and have as many mons as possible that would be able to handle the Skarmory Chansey core without being walled all of the time, because with my team being so specially orientated, it was looking very difficult for me to try and break this Chansey, but I did find a few ways to handle that. I also wanted reliable switches to everything outside of Mega Medicham. I literally, outside of bringing like a defensive Latios, which didn't really fit the rest of the team because I needed it to be a little bit more offensive, I wouldn't have a switch into Mega Medicham, so I wanted to make it as difficult as possible for him to capitalize on Mega Medicham. So the first Pokemon I wanted to build around was this Talonflame. So this set is a special set, so it's got it's Jolly with 104, which allowed me to outspeed things like his entire team, but most importantly, the Crawdaunt at +1. I couldn't outspeed the Alakazam naturally, but with Brave Bird and Gale Wings, it didn't make too much difference. The main thing was a +1 Crawdaunt. So the Crawdaunt can Dragon Dance up and Aqua Jet me. I'd still be able to outspeed it, out-prioritize it, and revenge kill it from there. So that was the main reason I had that speed investment. We've got Taunt on there, which Taunt allows me to shut down the Chansey and also the Skarmory, and the combination of Taunt plus Roost allows me to basically stall them out. The Chansey can't keep going for seismic tosses, and you know, I can slowly whittle it down, especially with Will-O-Wisp and stuff like that. I considered going Will-O-Wisp or potentially going for something like U-Turn, which will allow me, and, you know, with a little bit more speed investment, would allow me to outspeed the Alakazam and U-Turn on that. But I felt Will-O-Wisp worked better because it allowed me to Will-O-Wisp the Skarmory, and if it was Rocky Helmet, if he was Rocky Helmet with max physically defensive, he could actually wall me, and Brave Bird was still doing a reasonable amount of damage, and it would just make it a lot harder for me to try and break that Skarmory. And he's got a lot of big physical threats like Mega Medicham, the Crawdaunt, and then obviously the Goodra as well, which could be mixed. And also just being able to wear down a Goodra is really nice, because normally those guys are AV or something like that. So having a way to be able to wear them down is really nice. So that's why I decided to go for Willow over U-Turn on this guy. So that was the main job of this set, was to potentially sort of pick some mons off late game, outspeed his entire team, be a check to the Crawdaunt, and most importantly break that Skarmory Chansey core. Next we got our Mega Latios. I had to bring Defog on this guy 100%, because the option was Skarmory with Stealth Rock, Chansey with Stealth Rock, and also the fact he could get Spikes with Skarmory. I just couldn't afford him to hazard stack me, because even with Spikes and me having 1, 2, 3, 4 Levitate users or flying types that would not have to worry about it, it was still too much. Like, even like spikes just put too much pressure on my Milotic if I wanted that to be checked, you know, a good check for things like the Goodra and also the Crawdaunt, so it just wasn't feasible for me not to bring Defog. I originally considered like a calm mindset, but even then it was still kind of difficult to try and set up on, especially with the Chansey. There'd be lots of 50-50s of whether he was going to go for T-Wave or Toxic. Well, I'd have to try and work out when exactly to sub. So I've got enough speed there to be able to outspeed the Mega Medicham. And if I remember rightly, no, the Crawdaunt to +1, that's it. Enough speed to outspeed the Crawdaunt to +1, which slightly pips Mega Medicham. And I've got Thunderbolt on there and Psyshock, because that gives me fairly neutral coverage with the rest of his team. The only thing, you know, it hits the Chansey on the physical side, the Goodra on the physical side, I can super effectively hit the Crawdaunt, and also the Scum, and do a reasonable chunk to the Mega Medicham with the Psyshock. So overall, just really, really nice neutral coverage. And Roost on there, because I've got a fair amount of natural bulk, and it helps me a lot versus things like the Skarmory. Having reliable recovery against those guys, because they are going to be fat, it's going to take me a long time to wear those guys down, so I need to be able to, you know, recover up, especially if I'm switching into hazards and stuff like that. Next, we got our Rotom-Mow, which is another check to Crawdaunt. I was very, very scared of Crawdaunt, and it didn't take too much prep for me to try and handle Dragon Dance set, so I was like, it's worth it in the long run. So I went for a Choice Scarf set. This allowed me to outspeed everything on his team with this investment, including the Alakazam. With Leaf Storm, which I won't be clicking that much, the main thing is going to be Volt Switch. I've got Trick on there, which is going to be allowing me to potentially trick the Chansey or the Skarmory or something like that. And most likely the Chansey, to be honest, because I don't see the Skarmory switching in. And then finally, Discharge, which I was considering Discharge or Thunderbolt, but overall, Discharge is very nice. It gives me that good paralysis chance, which, you know, if I can paralyze the Mega Medicham, it's crippled, the Crawdaunt's crippled, or the Goodra's going to be crippled. So overall, just, and also the Alakazam as well, so really, really nice. Spreading some paralysis, potentially, if I can get, you know, at the right time, and potentially do a little bit more late game, if I need this guy to sweep. Next, we got Milotic. Milotic was kind of useless this game, to an extent. Like, it gave me a good switch into Goodra, but it was an okay-ish check to Crawdaunt. It was an okay-ish check to Alakazam. You know, Chansey just came in every time for free, and Mega Medicham still did like 80 to 90% with a high jump kick, which is just disgusting. So I went for a slightly wacky set thing, like, you know, why not? Let's go for it. So I've got Skull, Dragon Tail, Coil. At +2, he hasn't actually got too much to be able to take me down. So potentially, if I set up on the right thing, I could Coil up, you know, take those hits, 100% actually Dragon Tails, and just phase him round and just be a real nuisance. So I am expecting a lot of Toxic, so it was basically, this Milotic set would depend on, you know, how aggressive he was with his Mega Medicham, and also, you know, how many Toxic users he's got. So I'd have to scout a little bit for that first. But mainly just to switch in, just to be fat and take a few hits before going down. Next, we got our Exploud set. Now, I know a lot of guys are like, oh, Exploud, it only has one set with a Choice Spec set. I want to disagree. So this was the set I decided to bring. This set actually 1v1's a Skarmbliss core, which is very, very nice. So we got Soundproof on there because we don't need the Scrappy, and I don't think there were anything that was particularly likely to have sound moves, but it was still more useful than Scrappy. With Flamethrower, Boom Burst, which allows me to hit both the Chansey and the Skarmory relatively hard. Taunt, which shuts down the Chansey. And finally, Return. So Return allows me to do a little bit more to... I can't remember if it did more to the Chansey or not, but it was mainly for the Goodra, in case the Goodra was a switch in. I can do a good amount of damage to that. I've got 405 HP, so that means if the Chansey wants to go for Seismic Tosses, it's going to take 5 Seismic Tosses to kill me. Then I've got Leftovers Recovery, so that's going to help me even more, make it even harder for the Chansey to be able to take me down. So it might even be... I think, if I remember rightly, it is a 6-hit KO, if I remember rightly, from full. So from there, I should be able to take out the Chansey 1v1, which is really, really cool. And he doesn't have really many switches to Boom Bursts. So he's kind of, once I taunt the Chansey and he's still trying to Seismic Toss me and stuff like that, he can't switch because these Boom Bursts are going to be doing so much to any potential switch in. It's like even Mega Medicham, I have a chance to KO after rocks without the specs on that guy. So that's really, really nice. This guy's going to be really, really key. I'm expecting that chance to come in 100% of the time. Potentially the Goodra if the chance becomes weakened or he realizes I've got Taunt, and then Return's going to be doing a good amount from that. I know I'm negative attack, but I still think it's worth it. I still do more than a Boom Burst to an AV Goodra. Next, we've got the Uxie, which is a Cassid Berry. So this guy is, let me try and remember. So it's a Ghost type one. So this is potentially a check to Alakazam. I want to be able to make that Alakazam think that it can come in, revenge kill my Uxie. I can take the Shadow Ball on the chin, go for that Thunder Wave, and then the Alakazam is basically done from there. It's so much easier for me to deal with Dazzling Gleam, which allows me to hit the Crawdaunt hard and also the Mega Medicham. with knockoff, which allows me to knock off the chances items and any other items that I, that try and switch into Uxie. So that's really, really nice. And it's also my main switch into Mega Medicham. I've got 240 in HP, 252 in defense, and a Carb Nature. So the Carb Nature basically helps him potentially miscalc with the Alakazam. He might think I'm a bold defensive set, which you would expect to try and check that Mega Medicham. And he might then miscalc, and that 10% difference might be, the difference between living or dying. So I thought in the long run it was, it was worth the gamble basically. And then finally Stealth Rocks, he's got ways to get rid of them, but still, it's nice to get Rocks up if I can, helps weaken down and wear down his mons. So that was the prep that I did for this team. So what we'll do now is move on to the battle. Okay, so we are at the battle. The only thing I just want to note about my prep I forgot to say was my Uxie is also speed crept for a Jolly Crawdaunt. So that meant I was guaranteed to outspeed that without any Dragon Dances and stuff like that. Sorry, I forgot to say, mention that. So what we'll do now is go into the battle. So my Uxie was definitely going to be my lead. I wanted to set up Rocks. Has great matchups against the rest of his team, apart from obviously the Crawdaunt. Even then I can T-Wave it, and just T-Waving it's going to be really, really nice just to stop it being an absolute pain for my team if it does decide to set up. Or Swords Dance up or do something spooky like that. So I lead off with my Uxie, as he leads off with his Skarmory. So that was interesting. I'm expecting potentially like a suicide leader or something like that. And I decided my best bet here is just to go for T-Wave, because anything that switches in is not going to appreciate it. I can set up my Rocks next turn. There's literally no downside for me doing that. So he goes first, which is interesting. So it's looking like he's got max speed investment, or so, a good amount of speed investment. So that's looking to be more suicide-y leady, which was making me think, is he going to be something like Custap or something like that? Could be Leftovers potentially. And I was like, ooh, is it worth me staying in now to defog, or do I, go out into my Latios and actually get rid of these spikes, because it's going to be a real pain. So I decided to switch out here and go into my Latios and just get rid of all of the hazards on the field. It was a little bit counterproductive considering I just set up my Rocks, but now that I saw he had spikes, it was really, really key, because I did not want this guy to hazard stat me at all. Out comes the Chansey, as I expected, because that's the number one switch into my Mega Latios, as I just go for the defog and get rid of Rocks here. So now I'm expecting potentially a T-Wave or something like that, so I decided to switch out, go into my Rotom. If he Toxics me, it's not the worst thing in the world. I'm fast, so I'm meant to come in, take, one turn of Toxic damage and then Volt Switch out, so it's not the worst thing in the world. So I just go for Volt Switch here, as he goes into Mega Medicham, expecting me to go for the trick first time. And I was like, no, I'm definitely not going to do that. I'm going to Volt Switch out, get a really good amount of damage onto this guy, which is really, really nice. Now, I had two options. I couldn't really go into Uxie, because I couldn't afford this guy to have sub, outspeed me and then just go for the sub, because that would be absolutely dreadful. So I decided Talonflame was the best way to go offensively. I would have to take fake out damage from this guy, but looking at it, it was doing like 25 to 35%, so it was something I could afford to do, and it will put so much offensive pressure on his team, potentially force him into Skarm, and I can see if he's got those leftovers or not. He does get a good roll on there, and I get my leftovers back. So he now switches out and goes into his Chansey, as I just go for the Will-O-Wisp here. So I knew he was going to switch, most likely. I outspeed guaranteed, so I was like, Will-O-Wisp is the best way to go. The only thing I can see coming in is either the Skarmory, potentially the Chansey if he wants me to, take loads and loads of health off from recoil damage. So I was like, go for Burns. That's definitely the best way to go. So I go for Will-O-Wisp here as he goes into his Chansey, and at this point here, I'm just going to go for the Taunt, because, see what happens. He ends up switching out, goes into the Skarmory, as I just go for the Taunt here. So I still don't know what this item is on this guy. Could also be Rocky Helmet, was another thing that I was thinking here. So it was very difficult to know what to do. So I switch out here and go into my Exploud, because now what I can do is put the pressure on, bait him to go into his Skarmory, and just basically do a huge amount of damage from that. He gets paralyzed, which is really, really unlucky for his part. I do apologize for that. The main part of the paralysis was the speed control, not the tons of paralysis, of course, but it is unfortunate. So I do go for a I go for the Flamethrower here just to play it safe, because I knew the Chansey was coming in. Doesn't make too much difference, and I go for the Taunt, and apparently he was not expecting this at all, because he now can't set up the Stealth Rocks, as I'm just going to go and fire off a nice and powerful Boom Burst, and the Goodra is then confirmed to be most likely AV, but like a speedy AV, or something like that, depending on, how much speed it's got, and that means I can switch in my Milotic, which is really, really nice, and take that guy, take that damage on the chin. It was either going to be, like, max, it basically had to be speedy AV from the calcs, and I make a double here. Oh no, I didn't mean to do that. I do apologize, guys. So he taunt him. I make a double here. Yeah. So I make the switch into the Goodra. I apologize for that, guys, as he goes to the Draco Meteor, and that means I know he's going to switch here, most likely into the Chansey, because this is a momentum killer, my Milotic, because he can then go into his Chansey, set up rocks and all of that stuff. So I decide my best bet here is to go into, into my Exploud. So I go into my Exploud here, and from here I decide Taunt is really obvious, so I'm just going to fire off a return. So I just fire off my return here and get a really nice amount of damage on the Goodra. It's not much more, I must admit, but it's still that little bit more damage, and it brings him into 1 Boom Burst range. That's really, really key. He goes for Focus Blast here, and as I said, I'm still not sure. I'm pretty sure this guy is going to be AV or something. I can take 1 more hit. So I decide to play it safe and just recover up, just so I can take another hit from that guy. I do lose the momentum here, which is a real pain. And it does mean, though, I can go into my Rotom and potentially put some pressure on here. Now I was like, do I go for Trick here, or do I go for the Volt Switch? At this point here, I do go for the Trick, and I do end up tricking the Goodra a Choice Scarf, which is really, really unfortunate, and something that was, a real pain. I was not expecting him to switch this time, considering I Volt Switched last time. So I end up switching out here and go into my Milotic, knowing I can take any hit at all, as he just goes for Sludge Wave, and I can just take that on the chin absolutely fine. So from here, now he goes into his Chansey again, and it's unfortunate, but I do go for another double hit and go into my Exploud. So this is a nice position to be in, because now he's basically got to sack something if, he wants something to live. Or I can go for the Taunt. It's another one of those 50-50s. I do decide to play it safe, go for the Taunt here, as he does stay in and try and go for that softball. So now, this is the position I want to be in. I can start firing off those Boom Bursts and get a kill. So out comes the Goodra, and I do get the kill. So this has been 24 turns in, first kill of the game. So that's absolutely crazy. Out comes the Mega Medicham, very, very spooky guy, as I go into my Uxie. It's my only real reliable switch into this guy, as he goes straight for that HJK, looking to be potentially sort of adamant or something like that, as this allows me just to go and set up my rocks. Now I had another option here to go and knock off the Skarmory, and I decided not to, and I just go into my Rotom-Mow, because this, I know this Skarmory can't do too much for me. Like a Brave Bird's going to do a bit, but it's not going to do tons, and I'm expecting maybe a layer of spikes or something like this. And this way I can just Volt Switch, do a huge amount to this guy, and then potentially, put the pressure on next time. He does get paralyzed again. I do really apologize for that. And I just go for the Volt Switch here, just to put that sort of momentum on. And he goes, takes it on the chin with his Sturdy, as I switch out here and go into my Uxie. Because now what I can do is knock off if he wants to switch anything in, and something's going to have to take a good amount of damage. But here, he shows the Custap Berry, which I was potentially thinking about. And I was considering either just to allow him to get an extra set of spikes, or like a chance defog, or try and set up your rocks, or do something like that. But he shows the Tailwind. Then I looked at it and I was like, oh my goodness, I just realized I made a big, big mistake. Will made a boo-boo here, because by not knocking this guy off, he gets the Tailwind up, and he's got 3 turns of Tailwind for either his Mega Medicham, which at this rate I knew I could take a hit, so I was like, okay, the Mega Medicham can't come in. I can also Revenge Kill it with Talonflame if needs be. But out comes this Crawdaunt, and I have no switch-ins at all to this Crawdaunt. And at this point I was like, is he going to be Life Orb or Banded? He didn't show an item, so I was like, he could still be Choice Scarf, but my gut's telling me he's Banded right now, which is not good news at all, because I literally have nothing that can take a Tailwinding Banded thing. So if he's Banded, I die, and if he's not Banded, I would live. So unfortunately, this confirms at this point that he is Banded, so I've got to find one other Mon to lose from here. So I do go for my Rotom. Now it's being Assault Vest, it doesn't outspeed much, and it is fairly useless. Like, I could trick the Chansey, but that's about it. And yeah, the Tailwind peters out, and I've gone from being like 5-4 to going 3-4 in 3 turns, which is just absolutely terrifying. So I go for the Thunderbolt here, because it's definitely my safest play, and just take out that Crawdaunt. So that's really, really nice for me. Out comes Alakazam. Now this is the really key end game. So I could either attack him, break his Sash, because I knew I could take a Shadow Ball. That would allow my Talonflame to come in, potentially kill, because I knew a Focus Blast has a really good chance to kill my Exploud at that range. So I could go into my Talonflame, potentially kill. If I do kill though, he can then go into his Mega Medicham, Fake Out, kill me, and then I basically lost, because I've only then got my Exploud left, and he can outspeed me and high jump kick me. So I thought my best bet was to maybe go for the Defog here. Gives me a few more turns with Talonflame, and I can see what I can do from there. So I go for the Defog here, as he goes to the Shadow Ball, And I make a bit of a mistake here, I must admit. So what I should have done is just sacked off my Latios. But I was like, oh, it outspeeds. Exploud isn't as useful. You know, maybe I go into Exploud, take the hit, and then go and try and, you know, take out this Alakazam, which I think was probably, in retrospect, probably not the best way to go. So I decided to switch out my Latios and preserve it because it does outspeed the Chansey, and also it outspeeds the Mega Medicham, so it could potentially sweep later on. And I go out into my Exploud thinking, you know, he might go for Shadow Ball again, you never know, but he does go for the Psychic. That special defense drop definitely clinched it from there. With leftovers though, I do bring myself back up, so he's still got to go for that Focus Blast if he wants to kill me. So maybe it was the better way to go. He does hit the Focus Blast and kills me from there. So at this point it is basically GG because I can go into my Talonflame, Brave Bird, but from that range a Psychic is going to be able to kill. And I just unplugged my headphones by sitting on the cord, which is not good. There you go. Okay, so he does then take me out with the Psychic, and basically he gets an Alakazam sweep from there. So that was a real shame. At that point there, ironically, if I had U-turn, I think I won, because I could have U-turned, sacked off my Latios, and then come in, and I knew I could 1v1 these guys from there. So that was a real shame, but that's the thing, you can't bring prep, you know, you got to prep what you think is going to happen, but then it doesn't always happen on the day. But anyway, so unfortunately we do lose this round, which is a real shame, so we are knocked out of the tournament, but still, it was an absolutely fantastic game. 38 turns, really, really competitive. I was like sweating by the end, trying to make sure, yeah, lots of scary 50-50s, especially with the Exploud and the taunting and all of that good stuff. But anyway, that was a really, really fantastic match. Well done, Matt. Honestly, really, really good. And I hope you guys did enjoy it as well. I apologize, there were a few technical difficulties while doing that. But anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy this. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, and I will see you guys at the next one. Macadii out.